This is the story of my search for the real Graham Knuttel. It ends at the edge of this forest, but it begins in a chic night spot called the Club Tropicana.
Chef special, and make it extra hot.
Things hadn't been good between Tony and me. He was on the trail of Graham Knuttel and was sure the mob was out to get him. He was right, they were. I had to find out why. So I slipped into something more comfortable and went to meet top reporter Trevor Danker. We lunched at La Stampa. Over drinks he spoke of Stallone.
It was really a couple of years ago that I was contacted and told about the Sylvester Stallone connection. And as a columnist, I immediately realized, as a professional journalist, that that's something else very interesting, the fact that someone like Stallone has taken an interest in Graham's work. So I immediately contacted Hugh Charlton, who confirmed that Stallone was interested in more than interested in Graham's works. And he also told me that coincidentally the following day Graham was going to London with a painting that he'd done of Stallone's. So I asked him, would there be any problem in getting a photograph, picture? And he said to arrange for a photographer, and he would try to, he didn't know how Stallone would react, but he would certainly try. The picture went all over the world. It was used in newspapers in America and certainly England, I don't know where else, but several places. And as a result of that initial contact that was made to me, apparently the whole thing took off.
Danker told me that Knuttel's art had a cartoon quality. I decided to see for myself.
To be or not to be? Not to be what? A schmuck? Who wrote this stuff? Get me another writer.
Excuse me.
Yo!
What do you think of Graham Knuttel?
He's so good, I ought to give him a punch in the mouth. I mean, look what he did to Planet Hollywood.
I met Stallone. It was a meeting set up in London. We flew over and he was on the top floor of some hotel. He had the whole top floor there, and he had guys in suits at the doors, and he had the heating turned up full. He seemed to know quite a lot about art, and he told me that he had been a painter when he was younger, before he went into the film business, and he'd supported his mother and his family by his painting. He asked me to do a painting to commemorate the opening of his restaurant, Planet Hollywood, in London. And he commissioned me to do this over the phone. And he wanted a lot of stars in this picture. He wanted a lot of stars going in the door of this restaurant. But every day he'd ring me up, and the cast list was changed. Johnny Depp was out, or Johnny Depp was in, or Bruce Willis was out, or Bruce Willis was in. I got the idea that life in Hollywood, it would be a little bit like life in the Antarctic. You'd be jumping from one ice floe to the other, and they're all shrinking all the time. The only one I put in myself, my own choice, was Bono. I suppose instead of putting a Hollywood glitz on him, I put a sort of North Dublin glitz on him. He's got a North Dublin leather jacket, and maybe he looks a little bit out of place there.
I spent the afternoon with Tony's twin brother and tried to catch up on the case.
Nobody's at home, and the models are out, the dolls are out. Like, there's no woman in Graham's paintings sitting at home breastfeeding a baby. There's no lalesh stuff. They're out there with their best bib and tucker on. They're going to have a ball. They're in fact bitch goddesses like Lana Turner, Veronica Lake, Joan Bennett and Scarlet Street. They're the women of the B movies. The thing about them is that they're ineffectual as well. They have no power. They're powerless. Whereas then the kind of goody girls at home like Doris Day, the wife mother at home has no, she's no fun, but she's a lot of power. So the women who appear to be powerful in point of fact have no power. And I detect some of that in Graham Knuttel's paintings. There's a problematic about women. He has an attitude, I think, to women, which is not dissimilar to my own attitude and comes from my generation. I don't think Graham's women are totally rounded women. They're not. It's not kind of wife at home and wife out. Like, his women are out on the streets, they're out in cafes, they're public women, they're power dressing women, they're Veronica Lake women.
I read a biography of Lord Grade, the television film magnate, and ever since then I've painted quite a lot of bald-headed men. I suppose they represent a certain sort of power, where the forcefulness of their personality far outweighs their appearance. They're not bothered to buy toupees or anything like that. Lord Grade, his life appealed to me. He started out in life as a Charleston dancer, professional Charleston dancer. He travelled Europe with just a little table, custom-built table that he used to do his dance on, and from those beginnings he built up such a huge empire.
That night I met Jack McGuiran to find out more about the theme of jazz in Knuttel's work.
One of the attractions of Graham's paintings is the subject matter. They're mysterious, many of the paintings. And in some of the paintings he uses musicians, particularly jazz musicians. And I feel, being interested in jazz, that there's a great relationship between Graham's paintings and jazz. There's this sort of bold, brash freedom about the paintings, about the topics and the way he uses colour. The same way as a jazz musician, has the ability to move throughout the chords at will. There's nothing planned in jazz music. There's nothing planned about Graham's paintings, and I feel there's a terrific relationship between the two. I also think that Graham is probably Ireland's international artist at this particular time. In jazz music, we're very lucky to have people like Louis Stewart who are making it on the world scene in jazz, and Graham would now represent the arts community worldwide.
This is a painting of a club. Not the customers this time. This is the people who work in clubs. I worked a bit in clubs myself, and I know quite a few musicians who work in clubs, and they seem to be people who just form themselves to play in one place, and then they'll go another place and play with different people, and they just seem to be on the move all the time, don't know each other very well, and yet they all sing the same songs.
Jack gave me the name of a guy who collected Knuttel's art, hairstylist David Marshall. What could he tell me?
I have this client, she's a German lady, and she's a countess or something, and she lives down the Midlands in a very fine, established and big house, and suit Graham's art perfectly, I think. But she was questioning me one morning in the shop, and when I was doing her hair, and she said about the actual art that we have on the wall, which is a lot of Graham's stuff there. And she said, "How come you like that painting so much?" She said. I said, "Well, I like them, you know." And she said, "Yeah, but," she said, "they all look so angry."
I paint kitchens, chefs quite a lot. I worked in kitchens. I always like to draw a chef and a female member of staff. It reminds me very much of a domestic setup where all the tension takes place in the kitchen. They're making fish stew and they're drinking a lot. I've always noticed that chefs that I've met, they're always a caricature of a caricature of chefs. They're always bad-tempered, they're always red-faced and sweaty. They're very officious, they panic. They're not fun to work with.
I tracked down one of Knuttel's old drinking buddies, designer Howard Davison.
We were on a binge in sort of Pembroke Road area, and Graham departed saying he was staying in a friend's bedsit up in Pembroke Road. And so off he went. I didn't see him until the next day. Next day I meet Graham in not a very good shape, and I said, "How you going?" He says, "Jesus, you don't believe it. I woke up in the wrong bedsit." I said, "Oh, well, so what?" He said, "There was a policeman's uniform on the back of the door, hanging up, and 3 pairs of shoes." And Graham takes about size 20 shoes. I don't know if it's true what they say about people with big feet, but anyway. So he decided to trade in his shoes for the policeman's, and off he went. About 2 weeks later, what has Graham got but pencil drawings of shoes? A few weeks later, sculptures of shoes, be it Joyce's shoes, but in fact they were Garda shoes, but that was the sort of survival plan in those days, and there was his humour came into everything, and he lived all this out, and he had the great talent, or still has, hopefully, the great talent of being able to put on paper what he sees.
I don't think any success that I've had from painting has changed my outlook on life, really. It's just changed the environments that I see life going on in. When I started out painting and I didn't have a whole load of money, the sort of gangsters I met then sat on packing cases and they played cards, things like that, and they drank cheap brandy. Now the gangsters I meet sit in big hotels and drink the best of wine, and I suppose that's just life.
I thought Knuttel's work was influenced by fashion photography. I met up with Chris Robinson to find out more.
I don't think, well, in relation to photography, I don't think Graham's really had any great interest in it. I think the mechanics of it has always frightened him. He's never felt himself been mechanically minded in terms of technology. He's pretty much a hands-on sort of person. If he wanted something, he'd make it, basically. Don't think has had any direct use of photography, except the odd time to work up a study of someone and work from photographs, but it's minimal.
I think always when an artist paints a model, he is really painting the relationship he has with the model. In this painting, he obviously would have had some sort of carnal knowledge, because this painting is going on at night time when the light isn't really sufficient for an artist to work. Perhaps he has some other something else in mind. The model doesn't seem to like this artist. Maybe the model is more interested in having the painting done. Maybe it's more exciting to see herself on canvas.
Knuttel had many friends in the fashion business. One of them was male model Oriel. He knew a lot about Knuttel's style.
Graham's fashion is one of his own. I mean, like, I work in the fashion business and I have done for quite some time now. But his own fashion is not what's happening out in the street. It's your own individualism. And Graham certainly has that in his work. The way I see his work is that he works on pimps, he works on the girls, like with tight low-cut dresses, whatever. It's almost tacky. In fact, it is tacky, But it works so well because it's a combination of colour and the application of the paint. What I see in Knuttel's work is I see very powerful paintings. His work is very honest. He explores things that people are afraid to look at, like, you know, it's all like sex, clothes, pimps, you know, cocaine usage, colour, girls, men, all about sexuality, exploring different things. You have various aspects like cross-dressing, sex changes. It's all like the underworld, the seedy side of life, which is like, that's the way I think a lot of people want to live, but they're just afraid of it through conditioning today, you know. And I think it's brilliant that he pushes that right into the foreground and that makes it very obvious. Even like the whole sort of gay element in his work. He has like aspects where it's just different, where it's weird, it's all hidden, you know, but it's right there, right in front of your face. And if you can see it, well then it's excellent. And if you can't, well, it's your loss, you know.
When I paint sailors and women sailors, I suppose they're on a voyage of life or whatever. I like to show who's in charge, who's captain of the ship. In this picture, the woman is the treasure that the captain of this ship is bringing back with him, along with the fish. He's put a ball and chain around her ankle to stop her escaping. Birds, a lot of freedom. Birds are the things that can get out of the picture. They can fly away. They can come and go as they please.
I was out of my depth. I needed an expert opinion, and I got it from painter Derval Feehan.
I think Knuttel has a great... I adore like the way he does the big, huge, chocolatey caramel brown eyes with the overlaid and turquoise eyeshadow and the like mala black coals of hair. You know, I mean, his colours are so damn bright. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know, maybe he uses Ballygowan or champagne. Mine's like swamp water, but his colours are just pure, you know, striking. In Diamond Dave, it's really, you know, the cerise pink background and the gorgeous body described in gorgeous orange flames. It's like describing their relationship maybe. And then I also noticed the like handbag in front of her, and I can't help thinking maybe he's after her just for her money. I don't know. His work's very sexual, in your face, look at me, I'm divine. It's gorgeous.
When I paint women with cats, I like to think that the cat represents the wild side of a woman. The woman always holds a cat close to her heart. I like to paint them in luxurious situations, swathed with cloths or covered in sunlight or something like that. I always think the face of a cat is similar to the face of a woman. It has all the same expressions of what would you call it? In some cases, treachery or whatever qualities that women have.
Knuttel was an urban painter, according to Dr. Donald Fitzmaurice.
Sometimes paintings have subject materials which it's very difficult for people who've lived in a city all their lives to relate to. For example, often you hear living in Ireland about Jack Yeats' paintings and how he's a master of portraying horses and so on. For somebody living in the city like me who knows nothing about horses, this doesn't mean much. However, if you look at a Knuttel painting, you see people who live in Dublin, you see people who live in any big city. There are people who hang around on corners, whom you see in nightclubs, people who sit in the corners of cafes, who sit in bars. They're sort of people you know, and so you know if they're true or you know if they're real. And this makes the paintings very interesting, I think, for somebody like myself who's lived and who lives in a city. In fact, I lived in San Francisco for a while, and even there you have even more extremes in terms of the types of people you see, all sorts of people from a much wider range of backgrounds, and I think those sort of people appear in these paintings. And I think for a generation such as ours who are maybe disconnected from the land for better or worse, there are metaphors in these paintings which mean something to us. They are about people we know.
These two guys are staking out a building across the street. They've got a long wait there. Maybe they've got a video player or something in the background there that they can use. They've got that film Psycho Chill, which they're going to watch. When I lived in London, I used to borrow videos from a Turkish man, and he used to specialize in these sort of videos. Video nasties, maybe they are, I don't know. But, and these men are friends of his.
I found Knuttel's art disturbing. I wasn't alone. Dr. Maureen O'Brien echoed my thoughts.
I'm talking about Knuttel's work from the point of view of being a psychologist, as well as a very personal attitude that I have towards his paintings. And what it is it disturbs me. His paintings disturb me. And so I have to ask myself as a psychologist, why are they disturbing me? And what I come up with is, what I see first is this wonderful glamour, the bright colors, the wonderful illusions, the cars, the fast cars, the men in their power suits, the women beautiful and lovely and voluptuous and sexy, and all the things that we value in our modern life. But as I look at it closer, I see it's complete illusion. There should be, with the apparent glamour, all the beauty, all the fun, all the energy, all the life. And yet, with this sex, and there's no laughter, there's no joy, there's nothing that gives out life. It sucks you in like Dracula, sucking all your energy, pulling the very life force out of you, pulling you into these addictions. If it's alcohol, or is it sex, or is it drugs, or is it power? Whatever the addiction is, pulling you right into it.
The idea of Dracula interests me because I like the idea of the man and the woman, the Dracula and the victim. And I like the idea that the two characters are dependent upon each other. In this one, the man has a control over the woman. But at the same time, he needs the woman's blood. He has to keep the woman alive in order to take her blood. The sun is coming up. You can see it through the window. The sun's coming up, and now he's going to have to put the lid on his coffin, and the lid on the coffin of his victim. And he's got to pack it in now for another day. He's wearing a red silk dressing gown. The inside of the coffin is red silk. It's a cloth fabric that you'd always associate with the sensuous activities of the vampire. You could say possibly that it's a self-portrait as Dracula. I suppose all paintings are self-portraits in a way.
At last I had a clue to Knuttel's true identity. I decided to check it out. O'Brien had warned me that Knuttel was a recluse. She wasn't kidding. It was time to make my move.
Listen to them, the children of the night. What sweet music they make. You come to my house, an uninvited guest, searching for Mr. Knuttel. You show me no respect, and yet you expect that I grant you this favor. Do you know the price of such a favor?
You could say possibly that it's a self-portrait as Dracula. I suppose all paintings are self-portraits in a way.